Welcome to Career Cravings with your hosts, Dev Ramcharan and Megan Reed. If you crave a better and more satisfying career, this show is for you. We're broadcasting live on Bold Radio Station every week. Now, here are your hosts, Dev and Megan.
Welcome, everyone, to Career Cravings. You're here with your hosts, Megan Reed and Dev Ramcharan, and we're coming to you live from Toronto, Ontario. Tonight we have an interesting guest with us. His name is Michael Sorsdahl, and he is in Canada as well, but he is on the West Coast in Victoria, BC. He has had quite a career history. Currently, he is a psychotherapist in private practice, and he's also serving as a commander in the Naval Reserve. And he's been in the Navy for over 23 years. So we're going to get some interesting information from him tonight, I'm sure. So welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you very much, Megan.
So just to start us off tonight, can you give us a bit of an overview of your career history, where it started to where you are today, and maybe a couple highlights along the way?
Sure. So my career has been fairly varied, as you sort of gave as the overview of introduction. But back in the beginning, when I was a kid, I come from a military family, a Navy family, where my father was in the Navy, as well as my grandfather on my mother's side. So both sides of my family were big Navy people. So I moved around the country with my parents as I went through high school and grade school. And in that process, really felt like I wanted to follow in my father's footsteps at that time. So what I did was I ended up joining the Sea Cadets in order to figure out what, the military was about-ish, a little bit anyway, and then kind of went through that process. And then upon completion of that and off to university, after I graduated high school and from Victoria, I went off to university in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which is where my dad was an alumni graduate. And I started a program in psychology because I was interested in that, and then ended up joining the Naval Reserve because that was what I wanted to do at the same time while waiting to get into it full-time as a full-time career. So for my first 2 years of university, I studied psychology, but at the same time also worked in the summers and in the full-time in the summers with the military doing training as a Naval Reserve officer starting back in 1994. Once given the opportunity to transfer into the regular force, I decided to do that. So I actually left university and transferred into the regular force Navy as a full-time naval officer. And during that period of time, I did some great experiences. I deployed to the Arabian Gulf back in 1998 for one of the operations Mercator that we had done, which was a UN embargo against Iraq. So we did a lot of inspecting containers and stopping ships that were going in and out of Iraq in the Gulf. And we did that for 6 months in 98. Upon completion of that, I decided that I really wanted to expand my career back into psychology because I kind of missed that as something I was doing when I was in university. So I actually left to the regular force Navy again in 99 and transferred back to the Naval Reserve as a part-time naval officer and went back into school. Upgrading and studying while at the same time doing some contract work with the military to pay my way through that. And so what ended up happening is taking on contracts part-time with the reserves, including things like training as a training officer or and even at sometimes even going to sea on ships and such. I did that while finishing my undergrad in my Bachelor of Science in Psychology, my Master's in Counseling Psychology, and my Doctorate in Counseling and Education Psychology. Throughout my time frame, I took many services and jobs within the military, which also included things like the commanding officer of HMCS Brandon and HMCS Whitehorse, which are maritime coastal defense vessels. And so I ended up taking command of those at the end of my time as full-time, which was very exciting. And I ended up taking one of my ships, HMCS Whitehorse, off the coast of Guatemala, where we did an interdiction operation there. What they call Operation Carib, which is stopping and intercepting cocaine smuggling coming from South America into North America, trying to stop that from getting onto our streets. So I got to do those kind of experiences for about 2 years or so. About 5 years ago is when I sort of was finishing off that time frame. When I finished that, and I finished my full time there, and I kind of paid back all my student loans and I decided to go back and open up my practice again fully as a counseling as a counselor and psychotherapist here in Victoria. At the same time, instructing both at University of Victoria in their counseling psychology program and at Yorkville University in their counseling psychology program, as well as instructing in life strategies for their career development practitioner program there. So I both love education and teaching people in the practice that are helping people, but I also involved and love doing the working and teaching people how to drive ships in the Navy. So it's one of those two I kind of diverged in two different areas of my professional career, but enjoy both of them for their own different merits, if that makes sense.
Okay, it does, and that is a very good overview of everything that you've been involved with over your career. One thing I'm wondering, you were clear kind of from the beginning that what got you interested in the military was really your family history, your grandparents, your father, and it does sound like it was really important for you, I guess, to kind of follow in your father's footsteps to some degree, because you did even attend the same university that he went to. And I'm wondering what I guess held your interest or holds you still attached to the military after all these years, or the Navy?
Mm-hmm. Well, the military itself is like a family. So not only was my family in the military, I ended up belonging to the larger family of the military as a whole. So all my parents' friends are military. A lot of their kids joined the Navy or other military functions. So really, what drove me there was this sort of understanding and history that comes from being in the military and loving that, bear to arms and support, defend your country and doing something that is more than just for yourself was always something I wanted to do, and I was very proud of my father for doing. A lot of the time I spent missing my father because he was away at sea a lot. He ended up commanding HMCS Saskatchewan as well. So he and I were both in the same profession in the Navy as well. So I missed a lot of time with him growing up. So it was almost that honoring of wanting to see what he actually did and where he went away, whenever he went away and what he was doing. I got to had a very, very huge interest in that and believed in it a lot and believed in that give back to your country.
Okay. And so for everyone listening out there, and I think even including myself, there are so many misconceptions and stereotypes about what being in the military or being in the armed forces is really like. So especially with your career now and being in the counseling world, what are some of those main stereotypes or messages that you think are out there, and how would you counter those? What would you tell us is really the reality of being in the Navy?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess one of the stereotypes that people believe is this very stringent, rigid, inflexible belief of directive rules, right? To follow the rules, and that your bosses will tell you what to do and how to do it, and that you don't have any say. And that really, you could be in the word as a negative stereotype would be like be an automaton, where you don't actually have to think for yourself. You're told what to do, how to do it, when to do it. And therefore there is actually no free thought or collaborative work. So that's one of the big stereotypes I know people believe in. And certainly when people transition from the military back into the civilian world, a lot of, come across that challenge as they're working out there trying to find work into the civilian world, where that civilian, the people that aren't in the military believe that maybe you're too rigid, or you're not going to be as collaborative or helpful or working as a team. To counter that, I can honestly tell you that, as I said, the Navy or the military itself is like a family. We work hugely collaboratively because we are required to work as a team in the sense to affect a mission, which is very different than just affecting a goal that a company or so-and-so might actually want to achieve. So when the military wants you to accomplish a mission, it takes an entire group of people to do everything. So the amount of skills, the amount of leadership, the amount of, at different levels and at young ages, that we expect you to be able to work from and work together with is huge, which is not known, I don't think, isn't highly as well known in the civilian world as it would be in the military, as what we've experienced. So I would say that's one of the biggest misconceptions is this idea about collaboration, teamwork, and working together in order to work and achieve an end goal or an end state or a mission.
So this is really, really fantastic information, Michael. So here's a question for you then. When you think in terms of the military, and you think in terms of the armed forces, and the sorts of activity and so on that might be undertaken, the areas of defense, but also peacekeeping, and also ensuring compliance with international law, as you were doing when you were in the working around Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf and so on. To then think in terms of moving in a direction of a career that has psychotherapy at its heart. People might think, well, there seems to be a disconnect between those two things, the armed forces and moving into psychotherapy. But can you talk through how that is not, in fact, a disconnect?
Right. Well, actually, one of the biggest things that comes out of aspects of leadership, so in order to take that family, that group of people, and effect that mission accomplishment in Arabian Gulf and international law, requires an ability to listen and understand people. So that was what I would say that it's not all that disconnected as much as one might think. So when I took my ship as an example off the coast of Guatemala, I worked very hard to make a collaborative environment for everybody there so that everyone knows why we're there, how to do it, what we're expecting there in order to be able to hear and listen. The personal problems and personal issues that come up with regards to inter-work conflict, or even to the part where we're living together in a very small 55-meter-long ship, is a very tight quarters, and so a lot of that internal conflicts and issues come up, dealing with home, dealing with Staples families. All of that is all part and parcel of working as a family and working together when you're overseas or wherever you happen to be working together as a group. So I would say that as a psychotherapist, a lot of the skills that I have from my training and what I teach other therapists out there would come in, are hugely beneficial to those people that are working in the field, especially in the higher end leadership.
Got it. So would you say then, Michael, that in psychotherapy and also to be highly effective as a leader in the armed forces, high degree of emotional intelligence is required because you're continually engaging with people, understanding their emotions, and in fact, understanding their emotions on the ground in a highly stressed or very fragile situation can actually be key to saving your life and the life of others too. Would you say that's the case?
I would agree that very much so that being able to understand what people are going through and how to help people affect the end of the mission, being able to listen to them and work with them is very, very accurate. That high leadership, people that do well in the military, certainly have that high emotional intelligence for sure.
Yeah, Michael, one of the things that I'd love to be able to get your thoughts on. For people that are returning to civilian life from the military, from the armed forces, from the Navy, sometimes that transition and reintegration can have its difficulties. And part of it is people's stereotypes, for sure. There's no doubt about that. But if you were to give people advice on how best to support loved ones or colleagues who are reintegrating into civilian life, what kinds of things would we be able to do to help those people?
Well, actually, that was one of my big focuses during my doctoral dissertation, was looking at helping people transition back from deployments or even from the military back into civilian life in general. One of the big things that I found as a result of my research, but also as a part of working with people in the military as they transition out, is not only to try to put aside the huge stereotype that all people in the military suffer from PTSD or trauma, which is not indeed the case. However, there is a large portion of it, and they are receiving help. And just because someone has a PTSD or trauma-related symptoms does not make them have an inability to work in the civilian career. That's the one piece I would like to make sure I pushed forward, to be able to support people and know that people can be highly beneficial and highly valuable in the civilian workforce from the skills and knowledge that people have from the military training. More than that, because of the exposure at such young ages to high leadership, stressful demands, and being able to actually work with people to accomplish a job, I think what the civilian world as a whole could do better with is understanding what skills are transferable, truly transferable into the civilian world, into the areas of leadership. Not just, oh, you were in the military, therefore you must know how to do security, as an example, and that's all you can do. That people can come into at any level in any organization and come in with huge amounts of beneficial skills and abilities that have been drawn out of that work, that training, that focused teamwork ability to work together and utilize and build on strengths, to bring that into the workplace, whether it be whatever type of workplace that happens to be. So just to know that people in the military bring with them huge amounts of skills and benefit. And on top of that, those that are even the reserve people that work part-time still and are working within the civilian organizations as well, to also know that is a huge benefit as well. That the time that they spend working with the military on the side, like the 2 weekends a month or 1 weekend a month and 2 evenings a month or so, to do that training and maintenance and go away for a couple of weeks every summer to maintain their training. That information, that skills, those knowledge can be hugely beneficial to any organization that's employing both ex-military and currently serving reserve force members.
Okay, so I think you hit on another really good stereotype that people should be aware of, that there are all these transferable skills. And I think that is really an important point for anyone listening, military or not, that you have to be aware of what those transferable skills are in the experience that you've had and where those skills could be used somewhere else moving forward in a different position. From your perspective, Michael, what would you say your biggest transferable skills were coming out of the Navy and moving into the counseling world?
I think the biggest transferable skills that came for me was group facilitation skills. For me, directly attributable, that I drew from working with groups and teams within the military, that I was then able to facilitate therapy groups and counseling groups and psychoeducational groups. And it came very naturally to me to be able to work with people and integrate and create a cohesive unit team in order to accomplish whatever those group goals might have to have been. So those are one of the biggest ones that directly attributable to psychotherapy or counseling itself. But I would say even more so, what my largest attributable skill or things that are attributable and you can use directly into civilian workplace would be those leadership skills in general. The overarching leadership ability to take any task, figure out ways, project management, that kind of work, in order to figure out how to get to where you want to get to. I think that's one of the biggest skills outside of therapy that I also drew and brought into the civilian world.
Okay. And what was your experience like while you were still in active service and at the same time going through that education? Because to me, again, not knowing a lot about being in the military, that seems like a lot to have on your plate at one time. So how did you navigate that, and what was that experience like for you?
Well, I can honestly say it was at times quite challenging and quite difficult, because the demands based in the two different sort of worlds, one being psychology and psychotherapy and the other being military and military leadership, aren't always completely compatible in a sense at the same time. So there are certain demands, certain structures, certain regulations, certain ways of being that are expected, anticipated, and used within the military in order to accomplish different tasks, which are not the same as what you do when you are being more collaborative in a group-based therapy group or even individual counseling where you're doing more of the reflective listening. So there's a lot of different skills that happen to be used. What I found was that I became very adaptable, depending upon what situation I was in. And I found that I drew skills and attributes from one world into the other, and it worked really well. So that's where another part that I thought was interesting was, like, for instance, listening to somebody and going through that, and then when we start brainstorming or kind of working our ways out of that, we're able to be more directive when you take a directive approach with counseling than having to be completely passive. So I was able to use elements of my directive nature that came out of the military. And then vice versa, I was able to make things much more collaborative within the military when looking at how to work as a team to accomplish a mission, I became much more collaborative and much more listening to what the needs are and benefits are to make sure that everyone's thoughts are and everyone's desires were all sort of also part of that decision-making model to move forward. So I found that I started to meld both worlds, I guess, is the world that was, and it ended up being very complementary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really interesting how your experience in the military has influenced your psychotherapy and how your experience with counseling and with psychology influenced your work in the military as well. So super interesting, super interesting. In the military, I assume, or in the Navy, when I say military and Navy, are those interchangeable words or no?
Well, I wouldn't call them interchangeable. The Navy is one element of the military, so there's several different elements: Army, Air Force, Navy. But so the Navy is part of the military. Okay.
So while you were in the Navy, what was your favorite position?
Well, I have to say my favorite position was the commanding officer of my ships. So I commanded 2 minor warships for the Canadian Navy, and I can honestly say that was the best 2 years of my life so far.
Wow. So, Michael, it's been a fascinating career. The things you're describing to us, I think, really overturn a lot of people's assumptions about what individuals learn when they're in the armed forces. And I imagine, it's really important. I know we've been talking a lot in general terms with respect to the sorts of things that people learn when they're in the armed forces. And the reason is that there are so many people that are moving from the armed forces back into civilian life and from civilian life back into the armed forces again. But I imagine, as I listen to the things that you're saying, that things like project management, just plain people management, team development, crisis management, deep problem analysis and root cause analysis for things that need to be sorted through and then put back together again. Group facilitation, you talked about that in work that you've done in the Navy, and really wonderful leadership skills that you were talking about yourself earlier. Compliance management, because there's a significant amount of red tape, bureaucracy, requirements, and regulatory frameworks that you need to be aligned with and in compliance with as you're doing the work that you do. There's, as you said, deep collaboration across teams. Cultural sensitivity appears to be something else too. For you to be in the Persian Gulf or to be, off the coast of South America, et cetera, there's got to be some kind of understanding of cultures outside of your own so that you can work within them, demonstrate respect, and be effective in interacting with these cultures. And above all else, what you talked about is the versatility, the tremendous adaptability that comes with working in the armed forces. Materials management, procurement, all kinds of things related to leveraging and using complex policies. But above everything else, I think anybody coming from the armed forces has had the kind of experience that prepares them to be able to easily move into leadership roles eventually. And I'm grateful for the fact that you've been able to share those kinds of things with us. So psychotherapy is the direction that you went in the direction of, which means you've got a deep desire to understand and to be able to work with those things that motivate individuals and those things that make individuals effective. If there was something that you would like to say you want to have as the theme of your practice as a psychotherapist, a practicing people helper, what do you want that theme to be?
Mostly my focus and theme would be transitions. So I use that term broadly. Transitions being any type of transition that's needed in order to move from one area into another. So I'll use an example, career counseling, but also crisis and trauma counseling. Those types of things, any type of transition work that needs to be looked at is certainly going to be the theme that I end up looking at in my personal private practice.
Well, it sounds like you're going to be highly successful working in this particular field.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit. one thing that I am wondering about as I hear you talk is something that we ask a number of our guests. And I am wondering, what is career satisfaction for you, and what keeps you fully engaged in your work, Michael?
I would say the biggest piece that keeps me motivated in my work is seeing people be helped through whatever process or transition or whatever issue they end up dealing with and working in. So that worked both in my military and in my counseling careers so far. So helping anybody achieve the next rank, if it was in the military, achieve the next position, to grow and develop. One of the positions I held within the military was the Deputy Commandant of the Fleet School for a small chunk of time, a couple of months, which was a big thing about helping people learn, grow, achieve, and take that next step into their next trade level. And in the counseling world, of course, it would be the same thing. So watching people grow and learn, whether that be in a personal development or whether that be in a professional development or whether that even be in their own personal, professional development, or even if it's their own educational development, because that's also one of the draws that I have by also teaching in institutions, teaching both undergrad and graduate courses in institutions, is also that desire to help people move, transition, and move forward.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense, and I think that's so interesting. This is something that I come across a lot in career counseling, is picking up on those similarities between two careers that may at first glance seem so different and so unique, but really underlying both of those careers, the purpose for you is so similar. And that's why when we're working through career counseling with individuals, it's really important for us and so helpful to really dig in and get a sense of, what do you see your purpose as? What is it that you want to accomplish? And you can achieve that in so many different ways. And I think your story and your example is such a perfect case in point for that. I'm wondering, this is another one that we ask a lot of our guests, and I'm wondering if you could go back and talk to your 21-year-old self, what would you say to them with everything that you have learned throughout your career? And you have had quite an interesting career. What would you tell your 21-year-old self?
I would tell my 21-year-old self to stop trying to do everything all at once. So to allow things to grow on their own instead of try to taking on everything, because you'll get a chance to do everything. A whole life is a whole life, and there's no reason to pigeonhole oneself to say that I have to do everything all at once at the same time and therefore not really get to experience any of it. Because you're too busy. So enjoy it, I guess, is the biggest thing that I'm looking for, that I would want to tell myself.
So in that vein, because you have done so much and you have done so much right from the beginning, is there anything that you regret or that you would do differently if you could turn back the clock?
Not really, because I really do enjoy everything that I have done, especially in retrospect, in the sense of upon reflection. But I think one of the things that I kind of regret is that I didn't take the time to enjoy what I was doing, like as much as I could have. Sort of speaking on the same point from before, is that I think life can be so much better when you actually spend the time and focus a little bit more on the actual experience of it, vice what's next, because that seems to really take away from the experience of what you're doing.
Sorry. So Deb, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. So Michael, you're a driven individual. It's something that seems to have been a part of who you are from the earliest stage of your life. And it seems from what you've just said as if learning to savor your accomplishments and to savor the moment is really something that's taken a significant amount of experience as well as self-reflection to be able to accomplish. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say very much so.
And what had to go into that for you to accomplish that?
A lot of personal self-reflection and giving myself enough time, which happened later in life, I guess, to give myself enough time to actually look back on what I've done and actually really time, right? Time is what I needed to give myself. And unfortunately, in the beginning, in my younger years, I didn't give a lot of time for anything because I was so focused on doing the next thing. So what I would say is that taking a little bit of time just to, enjoy what you have done, reflect on what you have done while still moving forward, can still all be accomplishable. You don't have to give up that drive and motivation just to sit and enjoy some of it.
And Michael, I know we may be boring it a little bit deep and pushing you past your comfort zone, but what was the motivating factor for you? Why is it that you were functioning like somebody who was trying to catch up at that early stage of your career?
I think that was driven mostly by a huge cultural move that just seems to be the trend of what everything's happening in a lot of the different agencies and organizations. It was always about doing things a little bit later for me. So as an example, I went to university right away, but I left that and joined the Navy and took 3 to 4 years off before I went back to school. So then I felt like I was behind from the age group that I should have been when I was in it. So then I was trying to catch up for that, and then I was trying to catch up from missing times in the military. It's like splitting all of my attention in all these different areas never let me focus on one. At the same time, I would never give up the attention that I did provide to any of my professional movements. It's just that I think that drive, that motivation came from always thinking I was a little too old to be doing what I was doing or starting over or restarting. And what I can certainly, another part that I would certainly tell my younger self is you're never too old. It's never too late to try something new, ever. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is really important advice for everyone out there listening, whether your career is military related or not. You are not too old to make a change. Something that I like to remind people of, rather than looking back at how old you are or how long you've been working for, is flipping it and looking at it the other way and considering how much time left in your life do you have, or how many more years do you have left to work. And if you're not happy, and this wasn't necessarily the case with you, Michael, but if you aren't happy or you aren't satisfied or there is a change that you want to make, what's stopping you from doing that? Because you have the time to do it. So even though in your case you felt like you were in a rush and you had to catch up or you were behind in ways, I think it sounds like it really helped you to gain that awareness of the importance of living in the present and being aware of and focused with what was going on in your day-to-day life. And is that something that you have been able to achieve now, Michael, that now that you've had that realization about really being so forward focused, do you find now that you are more present focused in your life?
Very much so, actually. I found that there's a big shift that's happened since I was able to slowly and allow things to happen in their natural time, that organic experience of saying, I don't need to make it happen, I can allow it to happen. With sort of this different mind shift that came for me, which has been very helpful. And with that, I have enjoyed what I do a lot more, and I get into doing more of things that I enjoy doing instead of being so focused on things just to get them done. I now spend the time to do it knowing that I have the time.
Okay. And so even though you are much more present focused, I will assume that to some degree you do have future plans out there as well. What are 3 key things that you would want to accomplish between now and the day you retire, for example?
3 big things I think that I would like to accomplish would be, 1, to open up this retreat that my intention is to open up, which is this retreat designed for personal and professional development, and more holistic approach to doing that, just to allow a place and space for people to actually grow and learn in whichever way it works best for them. So that's one big accomplishment I would like to do. Another one will be to really help this transition for military members from the military careers into the civilian one, looking at those, as I said before, those transferable skills and making it a little bit not easier, but at least better known in the civilian community as well as in the military community, but what those transferable skills are and how beneficial they can be, and so helping people actually do that transition to make it easier. And then lastly, I think the big piece that I want to do is to ensure and maintain continuing to provide support for those people that do suffer from PTSD and trauma. that I specialize in and do specialize in within my practice to make sure that that people that are suffering and from the nature of their work, whether that be in the military or that be a first responder or any other type of work that ends up putting you in the line of fire, for lack of a better term, that they're helped. So those would be the three big things that I still want to continue doing and grow towards.
Okay. And so kind of in that same area, I guess, I'm wondering for people that are coming out of the military and returning to civilian life, is there any key information or key advice that you would have for them? I know earlier in the show you gave some advice for people who may hire people coming out of the military, but I'm wondering for those people themselves, what advice would you have for them? Because it's obviously something you've been through yourself, and as well, it sounds like you've worked with a number of people who have gone through that transition as well. So are there any kind of key themes, and I guess based on those themes, any key information that would be really helpful for people moving to civilian life listening today?
I would say the first thing I would point out would be that you all have more skills than you know. So as much as the civilian people are less informed about what those skills and transferable skills might be, I think the military, just as the same, doesn't know what their skills are, how their skills are transferable into the civilian world, because we come from very different subcultures, if you look at it that way. So what I would say to help people is that you do have a lot of transferable skills. Look at everything that you do, everything that's been done, everything that you've accomplished, and everything that you've been through to find what are the greatest experiences, knowledge, skills, and attributes that could be beneficial anywhere. Because I'll say a lot of people don't get the experiences and exposures to the skills and pieces of information that people in the military get. So that actually makes you valuable by someone that has to try and just go into a low-end job because there's nothing else that they can do, that there is valuable skills that they own.
Okay. So really on both sides, for employers and for people coming out of the military, it really is that key message about transferable skills and being aware of what your transferable skills are. And for people that have never been in the military, that understanding that there are so many strengths and unique experiences that lead to some really strong skill sets. I'm going to change gears on you a little bit. And I think it's mostly because I have never really spoken so in depth with someone who's been in the military. But I'm wondering if you could snap your fingers and change something about the world we live in, what would it be?
If I could change the world we live in. That's a hard question.
I know.
I would say, I guess the biggest thing would be is that collaboration and cooperation, if they were the paramount things that people did and worked for instead of the tendency to look uniquely and individualistically at something, I think that would change the world drastically.
Oh, that's a very powerful answer. That is a really good one. And kind of stemming from that, I guess, what if you ever had a child, what would you teach them about work and what it means to work? What does that mean to you?
Well, work is just one component, a huge component, but one component of living. So work, to me, I think if I was to have a child, what I would try to instill upon them is that, one, you can do not anything, but you can do. It's never too late to do anything that you would want to do if you put your mind to it, be one, but to enjoy it, to find something you enjoy doing. Don't do it because someone else told you to do it. Don't do it because it's because of an external factor or source. Do it because it's something that you enjoy doing. Because if you find that connection to passion and work, then you will love to work instead of having to just work to live.
Wow. Those are some beautiful answers, Michael. We're really putting you on the spot with some of these questions too. And we're making them deliberately hard because, you come with a depth of experience and also a depth of insight that I think we really want to be able to take advantage of under the circumstance. So there's a question that we ask, which puts us in a situation where we think far ahead into the future, however far that might be. If you were to imagine yourself at your retirement party, and people are talking about you and about what it was like to work with you and what it was like to be your colleague wherever you found yourself, the armed forces or in psychotherapeutic and career counseling practice, whatever it may be. What are the kinds of things you would want to hear people say about you that would make you feel, yes, they got who I was and what my desired contribution was to the world?
I think what I would like to hear is that, a reflection, when they reflected on what I provided or what I did, that the reflection would be that I gave to the world, that I helped bring the world together instead of tear it apart, that I would hear words about creating that connectivity, that idea of collaboration, those types of ideas that help people grow and overcome obstacles instead of getting hit by an obstacle and let down, so that I was that helpful person, someone that they said, he really helped me, or what his business did really helped me, or what his vision of his business did really helped people. I want to make sure that what I'm remembered for, I guess, when I'm done at my retirement, is that I brought into the world another way of connecting that has contributed to the larger cohesion of the global world that we're living in now.
And what would you not want to hear? What would you feel would really greatly disappoint you if you heard those things said instead?
Well, yeah. Well, one of the things I think that would kind of, almost the exact opposite to what I was wanting to hear was basically saying he was in it for himself or he was in it for the money. Or he stepped on others to get to where he got to. That would be the something I wouldn't want to hear.
Okay. Wow. Well, I'm telling you, from everything we've heard so far from you, Michael, I think you're absolutely going to achieve the things that you've said you want to be able to achieve, the things that you want to hear at your retirement party. And I just love what you said when you said that you would want to hear at your retirement party that you helped bring the world together and not tear it apart. Now, I know that you didn't pre-think that because it was something that just came spontaneously out of you, but it's an extremely telling aspect of who you are as a person, the integrity that is innate to you, and the good character that really you've brought to everything you've done in your career to date. If you were to think in terms of the best possible advice that you could give to anyone listening to this program, especially people who are struggling with depression about their accomplishments in their careers, or feeling stuck, or feeling that they have terrible career cravings that can't be satisfied, what would be the advice you would give to them?
I think the biggest piece of advice I would give is that it's never too late to find joy in what you do, and to take the initiative to find a way to love what you're doing with your life so that you can find that synchronicity, and that there is really nothing that stops us from doing that except ourselves.
Wow. Megan, over to you.
Well, I just have one final question before we go to our break today. I think I'm kind of in awe and a little bit inspired listening, and I think something you've said just made me tear up a little bit. So anyways, my last question for you today, Michael, is what are you most grateful for?
I think I'm most grateful for the opportunities that those that have come into my life have provided me, whether that be through connection through work or whether that be through by family. The support and opportunities provided have been phenomenal in my life. So that would be the one thing that I think I would take away with that.
Okay. Okay. Well, with that, I just want to thank you very much for coming on the show tonight and sharing with us, Michael. It has really been a pleasure to speak with you, and I say that on behalf of Dev and I. So thank you again very much. And with that, we will go to break.
Great. Thank you.
Well, you just heard from Dr. Michael Sorsdahl, and he shared with us an amazing career history. So from the beginning, he came from a military family, and early on, he tested out the Sea Cadets to see what it would be like for him to be in the Navy. He did follow in his family footsteps and choose to move into the Navy, and he served as a ship captain for a period of his career. He also followed in his father's footsteps and went to university in Saskatchewan, and he took psychology. So hearing that for me was a really interesting experience, because to me those things sound so different, but like you heard tonight, there are so many similarities between those two career paths, and really at the heart of it is helping others. So I think that is a really powerful and interesting message to get out there. A few key things that Michael spoke about was first of all, some of the stereotypes that are out there about the military. And I think one big thing that he touched on was really the fact that the military is so collaborative, and it's really like a family. And when you're executing a mission, it's not just a goal. It really is so much more than that, so much bigger, and it requires so much cohesion, communication, leadership, really all of those elements and those skills and working together. And throughout the time we spoke to Michael today, that was something he hit on over and over again, is really that element of collaboration and cohesion. And that's something that really plays into his role as a psychotherapist and as an educator, that he can bring that collaboration and bring those leadership skills, and as well as that, his understanding of actually going through the life that he led in the Navy, as well as that transition to civilian life, and what was that like, and what was the impact of that. So anyone out there that has been through that sort of transition or any other transition, that's really where his focus is now with his practice, with his psychotherapy, with his education, really digging into those transitions. So for me, it was just, I think, again, highlighting that how everything in his career, even though at first glance it might seem so separate and transitory, really isn't, because those transferable skills, and that was another key thing that he hit on a few times, whether it's advice for employers or employees, or, well, I guess employees who have come out of military life and are moving back into civilian life to a regular position or job. Be aware of those transferable skills and highlight those transferable skills, because they are such an asset, and they are so strong and unique that they really can put you a step above, even if you haven't worked in a day-to-day 9-to-5 job or position. What are those elements that you bring to the table? A few other things I think that were highlighted were the adaptable nature of Michael, and I think that would probably apply to a number of people in the military, is how adaptable you have to be. So that's, I think, some good advice or good understanding for people who are considering a career in the military. That ability to be adaptable is really key. Other than that, I think something else that really stood out for me is when Michael was speaking about the fact that he was so future focused in his life from an early age, and getting things accomplished, and really the focus was getting things done as opposed to enjoying things along the way. And I think for anyone out there listening, that is such a powerful message. And I've worked with so many people who have that same mentality of accomplishing things, getting it done, getting to that next step. And as opposed to thinking of it like that, enjoying the present moment. And that's something that Michael said he is much more active at now, that he's aware that he used to be that way, is enjoying things, slowing down and focusing on the present as it occurs, and being grateful and happy for things or about things that are going on in everyday life, just the little things. So you don't get to that point in your life and you look back and think, well, that was no fun, and why didn't I pay attention? Because that was a great period of my life, but it didn't seem like it while I was actually going through it. So I think that is some really, really key advice. I think the biggest thing for me that was so nice to listen to and just genuine was Michael's underlying goal really throughout his whole career of helping others grow and helping others overcome and transition, become their better selves, and not just impacting people individually, but helping people on a larger scale and helping the world, I guess, at large connect, work together, be collaborative, as opposed to being individualistic and out for oneself, rather coming together and working for the collective good. And so through helping individuals, that's what he would want to inspire those people to do. And of course, he wants to help them in their individual life, but in doing so with the hope that it would impact the greater good as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Dev just to give his reflection of his experience of today's show. And after that, he will close the show as well.
Thank you very much, Megan. You know, we have a lot of guests on this show, and every one of them brings a kind of uniqueness that really makes you feel a sense of privilege, having walked a short distance with them as they go through their career path and share the best of who they are with us, for both of us, but also for the individuals who listen to our program all around the world. And by the way, we'd love to get your feedback. So send us your thoughts, send us your feedback on these shows, send us your feedback on what we've learned from Michael today too. That would be just wonderful to get. What do I get when I listen to someone like this speak to us? Well, one of the first things that really rings through with tremendous authenticity and power is that this is a man who has got a great respect for tradition. He's got a tremendous respect for the work of those who have gone before him. It's often the case that if you talk to people whose parents or parent has been involved in the military, that there's almost an underlying resentfulness at that force out there that stole their father or their mother from them and prevented them from having the amount of time that other people's kids might have had with them. But there's not even one snippet of resentfulness in Michael. Instead, what Michael chose to do was to see the great things that his father was doing and accomplishing in the Navy, and to develop a desire to have the same sorts of accomplishments and achievements for himself. He's talked about the stereotyping that comes with people who have worked in the military, worked in the armed forces, worked in the Navy, the Air Force, whatever it may be. When they get back into civilian life, and there are only one or two things which they've probably seen on television and in the movies that give them a sense of what being in the military is all about. And these things are easily overturned when people are actually able to see people who come from the armed forces into civilian life and really display all the rich things that they've learned as a portfolio of skills while operating in these circumstances. And one of the biggest things he talked about was the ability to learn flexibility, the ability in the moment to be able to come together with a team and collaborate together in order to solve complex problems. One of the things that stands out for me is that Michael is the kind of individual that you would describe as the quintessential Canadian. He is not about breaking the world apart. He talked about the fact that what he wanted to be remembered for is, in his words, I helped bring the world together and not tear it apart. And that was something that was an incredibly Canadian statement. It's at the heart of the Canadian psyche. It's at the heart of those policies which have supported Canadian peacekeeping around the world. And people like Michael, in fact, would be examples of that kind of work as it is fulfilled and performed all around the world, quietly, humbly, behind the scenes, and with devastating effectiveness everywhere it's actually seen, and respected by the military of countries all around the world because of the manner in which it's done and the attitude of mind that is demonstrated in the performance of those duties and tasks. Everything that he says and has said in his interview would work together to build that profile of the classical Canadian military personnel, the individual who goes out there to serve, to protect, to heal, and to pull together circumstances that might be fraught, fragile, and involve intense and incredible danger. Michael has performed in his career like a man in a hurry to accomplish something. And sometimes the speed and the force which he has dedicated to achieving those goals may have left people around him a little bit out of breath. And as he sometimes struggled to actually get everything achieved that he wanted to achieve, and sometimes found that he was not savoring the moments and savoring his accomplishments after he'd accomplished something, I imagined it was just another laurel that he threw behind him without adequately pausing to consider what he'd actually done and the incredible gifts that he had demonstrated in achieving those things. He's learned since then to stop and to actually savor the moments. And I imagine he's become a better leader to those around him as a consequence likewise. In spite of that push, in spite of that incredible drive that he's demonstrated in his career, there's at the same time a deep compassion, a warm, empathetic heart as it relates to the needs of others. And I imagine, given his story and the story that his story tells about him, that he is the sort of individual who would have been naturally adept at understanding points of view completely different to his own and diverse in many, many ways, so that he could see to the heart of people's needs, desires, ambitions, fears, and address them. I think this helping aspect to who he is what has naturally driven him in the direction of psychotherapy and the psychotherapeutic process of repair, of engagement, of coaching, of supportiveness in order for people to find their best and their better selves. And his ambition, which is to create a retreat that does exactly that, harmonizes totally with the individual that we've seen and come to know a little bit as we've gone through this conversation with him. Michael Thorsdahl shows us the best of what we can be when we work in support and service to other people. The thing that he was in horror of hearing, if he ever heard it, was that he did what he did only to look after and care for himself, or he did it for the money. That's not something that drives Michael. What drives him is service, strengthening other people, seeing them go to the next step that they need to go to, and having some sort of excellence in their lives. He knows the mistakes that you can make when you drive too hard. He also knows, on the other hand, the incredible accomplishments that anyone can make once they put their minds to it. He has an ambition, which is to be known as an individual who really has worked with and helped other people and helped make the world a better place. And I'm pretty confident, based on what we've learned and heard tonight, that this is the kind of man who is going to accomplish just these things. Work means a great deal to him. Work for him will always be something that he'll be engaged in. This is not someone who's going to retire. All that's going to happen is that the nature of his work will change all the way through his life because it's in him to the core to serve and to work and to help. And we wish him the very, very best. I'm Dev Ramtran, and for Megan and myself, I thank you all for listening to our program this evening. I wish you the very best, and hope that you, like the people we've been talking to through these sessions together, begin to satisfy some of your career cravings by believing in your ability to push forward and transition through to a wonderful career.
The career discussion doesn't stop here. For more information about how to transform your career, visit CanadaCareerCounseling.com. And remember to tune in next Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Bold Radio Station for the next episode of Career Cravings.